Respected Principal Madam of Machkhowa Degree College, Dalimi Gohai Madam. Respected Chairperson, Dr. Dipen Soikia Sir. Respected Chief Advisor of the Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, Dr. Anil Soikia Sir, and retired Principal of Moran College. Respected Inaugurator of this program, Professor Larry Luanga, Professor and Dean of Public Administration and Political Science from Mizoram University. Respected Dr. Ramesh Chandra Borapatra Gohai Sir, Senior Advocate, Guwahati High Court, and different faculty members from different department of Machkhowa Degree College, and all the members present in today's program. I, on behalf of our organizing committee, welcome you all to this webinar on intellectual property rights, organized by the Department of Political Science, Machkhowa Degree College, in collaboration with Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, Guwahati, and in association with Assam Political Science Association. So at the very outset, I would like to request Dr. Anil Soikia Sir deliver his welcome speech.
Very good evening to all the members assembled here. And this webinar is organized by Department of Political Science, Machkhowa College, and Principal Machkhowa College. And the members, all the members of Center for Ethnic Studies, especially the coordinator, Dr. Dipen Das, Assistant Professor RG Borua College. Inaugurator of this program, Landing Trenguna, Department of Public Administration and Dean, School of Social Science, Mizoram University, Aijal. Our very revered resource person, Dr. Ramesh Chandra Borapatra Gohai, Senior Advocate, Guwahati High Court. Joint Coordinator, Mrs. Sandra Prabha Devi Shahu, Assistant Professor of Machkhowa College. Moderator, Gargi Fukan, Assistant Professor, Graduate College. Our Technical Coordinator, Dr. Zukesh Das, Professor, MDK Girls College, Dibrugarh. And Assistant Coordinator, Dolly Rani Shiling, and Professor, Machkhowa College. And Dr. Dipen Soikia, Chairperson of this webinar. And I have seen Dr. Hagan Chandra Das, very revered person for me. Yes, this is very interesting topic, intellectual property right. This will be thoroughly discussed today. There are so many intellectual property. I like to draw attention, especially those property, those had been created by the folk artists. Say our marriage song, say our Bihu Nam, and the Bisharar Git, Tukari Git, so many songs are there, so many stories are there. Those are created by nobody, but these are the property of a community. How this intellectual property right will be acceptable, by applicable to those who collected secondary data, not primary data. If someone is collected primary data, say Bonbenu is collected, is a collection of Bihu song collected originally by Dembe Sorneo, and these are originally. And after collecting so many books of Bihu song, is there any right to write as copyright, to make it a copyright that this could not be published by other? Say a Bihu song is collected by somebody and re-edited by somebody. If re-editor is right there, that this copyright is strictly prohibited and nobody can publish this. And I like to draw attention of Dr. Ramesh Chandra Borapatra Gohai, whatever be the intellectual property right for those folk creation. Is there any property right for folk creation? Is anybody can patent this right in a edition of book? Yes, with these few words, I want to welcome all the dignitaries and all the members assembled here, all the professor of Machkhowa College and all the designated member of Assam, all Assam Political Science Association. Yes, we this word I once again welcome to the all our respected dignitaries and speaker, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Soikia, sir, for your welcome speech. Now, I would like to request our inaugurator, Professor Lalit Duanga from Mizoram University, to deliver his inaugural speech. And before his inaugural speech, I would like to introduce Professor Lalit Duanga before you. Professor Lalit Duanga has an enlightened teaching career of 28 years since he joined one of the premier central universities of India, the Northeastern Hill University, that is NEHU. He also has, to his credit, an undergraduate teaching experience of 5 years before joining the DNEHU. He is a former Dean of Students' Welfare and Head of Public Administration Department, and at present, Dean School of Social Sciences, Mizoram University. He has delivered 91 invited lectures on assigned topics at the national and state level. He has also presented papers in international seminars and conferences. He has chaired several technical sessions in international and national seminars, numerous presentations and publications in reputed seminars and journals aside. He is the sole author of Mizoram Development of Political Administrative System and Statehood, along with two co-authored books, namely New Public Management in India, Problems and Perspectives, and Consumer Awareness and Consumer Protection. He has also contributed a good number of chapters in books published by renowned international and national publishers. He is the chief editor of a journal, Contemporary Social Scientist, published by the School of Social Sciences, and also the editorial board member of another reputed journal, namely Administrative Studies, published by the Department of Public Administration, Mizoram University. He is the life member of Indian Institute of Public Administration, Indian Public Administration Association, and Indian Political Science Association, Northeast India Political Science Association, Northeast India Historical Association, and Mizoram Political Science Association, etc. We are very happy that Professor Lalit Duanga sir is with us. Now the platform is yours, sir. Thank you. Sir, please switch on your mic, sir.
At the outset, I express my heartfelt thanks to all the members of the organizing team, particularly to the two coordinators, Dr. Dipan Das and Dr. Zogesh Das, for inviting me to inaugurate this important and relevant national level webinar on intellectual property rights. Yes, as we all know, intellectual property is a category of property that includes, as stated by our member who has expressed his vote of thanks, who has welcomed us. And this property includes intangible creations of human intellects. Many of us know that these copyrights, patent, trademarks, and trade secrets are intellectual properties. Today, under the direction of University Grant Commission, we are compulsorily teaching these aspects in RPE, that is research publication ethics, and which is why even in the intellectual community or even in the academic fields, we have to be very much conscious about the importance of these intellectual properties. Intellectual properties are the rights given to persons over the creation of their minds, whether it may be intangible, but it may also be tangible, to my understanding. Take, for example, in order to conjure the works of others, like literary works, we must compulsorily acknowledge the author of that intellectual works. And therefore, the creators of the creators of these properties are usually given exclusive rights over the use of their creations for a certain period of time. As members of intellectual community, we should familiarize ourselves at least with the 4 types of intellectual property. Intellectual property rights, see our resource person would dwell on this, I hope. Intellectual properties are legal rights that protect creation or inventions resulting from intellectual activity in industrial, scientific, literary, or artistic fields. Today, we are very fortunate in having Dr. Ramesh Chandra Borpatra Gohain, Alliance Senior Advocates from Guwahati High Court as resource persons. We are very fortunate in having this kind of learned persons who is supposed to be the right persons to speak on our team. With the realization of the importance of intellectual properties for all of us, I gladly inaugurate this national level webinar on intellectual property rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lalit Donga, sir, for your inaugural speech. In your speech, you have highlighted some important aspects of the main theme of this today's program. I hope our resource person will highlight the entire theme in a very detailed form. Once again, thank you, sir. Now, I would like to request our resource person, Dr. Ramesh Borpatra Gohain, sir, to deliver his speech. And before his presentation, may I request Dr. Gagri Pukon, the moderator of the program, to introduce our resource person, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dipendas, and good evening to all. And I'd like to welcome you all to national level webinar on intellectual property rights organized by the Department of Political Science, Machkhowa Degree College and Dhemaji, and in collaboration with Center for Ethnic Studies and Research in association with All Assam Political Science Association. So today we have Dr. Ramesh Chandra Borpatra Gohain as our resource person. He is a former professor and dean of Department of Law, Guwahati University, and former Advocate General Government of Assam and Senior Advocate of Guwahati High Court. Presently, sir is working as a Senior Advocate of Guwahati High Court. His area of interest is human rights, governance, and constitutional jurisprudence. So we are very lucky to have you, sir, as our resource person today, and hope all our participants will learn a lot from you, sir. So, sir, platform is all yours now, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I, at the very beginning, express my sincere thanks to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to interact with the learned people of the country. The topic for discussion is really very important from all perspectives. And when we're coming to the concept part, intellectual property, I had some experience in my life that it is nothing but the elevation of the aptitude of human being from the vegetative to mental, then intellectual. That means it requires a deeper understanding of the concept. And normally, it encompasses everything that human intelligence creates. Now, when you talk of intelligence, then the 2 aspects, in my understanding as a student of law, is very important. The hindsight aspects and also the foresight aspects. And today the discussion I'll be making should be definitely on the foresight aspects of understanding the concept. When you talk of the foresight, then in that case, the upliftment of the academic pursuit of an individual from the vegetative to mental, then to intellectual. That means it is the 3rd layer of human personal development. And that is why it is called the creative, or in other way, in a philosophical term, we can treat with a lateral perspective of understanding certain concepts. Then second part is when we talk of hindsight, it is a normal practice, common practice. We can take over or take up the matter only with the mental level and not uplifting it to the intellectual level. So when we're talking of the intellectuality or the intellectual property, how the intellectuality is converted into property. At the very beginning of the human civilization, there were also innovations, creativity, but these were not confined to an individual who created. It was a social right. But gradually, in the flux of time, when our needs, requirements, aspirations, hopes are changing so fast, depending on the evolution process, we have decided to assert certain individual claims on those properties which we have created by an individual or the scientific world, the inventors or the discoverers. Now, intellectual property will have to be dealt into perspectives. One is the industrial property. As my earlier speakers, they were talking about, that includes trademark, patent, copyright, designs, and plant varieties and commerce right perspective, and also the biological diversity. These are the dimensions which are there under the domain of industrial property. Second part is more important for our academicians, that is the copyrights. Copyright includes literary creation, music, instruments, or whatever is related to that creativity is, those are the rights which are covered by the copyrights. Then how to deal with them is a very important perspective. Before going to those individual aspects, what are the bases in the international level and also the national level? I personally believe as a student of law that we must have that thorough understanding of these bases. In the national level, especially we talk about the Indian Democratic Republic. As you know that after a long struggle, we have won independence, and we wanted to form a sovereign socialist secular democratic republic in India. And we have also committed to each other the concept of justice, social, economic, political. And that will be the thrust of my discussion in context to the constitutional as well as the international law perspective. Second is the liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. Thought is a process. Thinking is a process. As I've said about that, we will have to go to that level of intellectuality for creating something. Now, as we know, our human mind, human brain has the 4 states. First is beta, the activity which we have been doing for the whole day. The second stage is alpha stage, which requires little bit of diversion from the normal practices of common day-to-day affairs. And third is theta level. And in most of the creators I have studied well, whether they are scientists like Einstein, whether philosophers of any level, or the national level or international level. Say, for example, Bertrand Russell, I can refer to. Innumerable instances are there. Then in that case, in the cultural side also, there are many people who have gone to that level of theta stage of brain, and they have created something innovative. And by virtue of that, we have been developing the idea of intellectuality. Now, intellectual property rights, as I have referred to in terms of our Constitution, the preamble, the justice, social, economic, political, primarily the economic perspective. Then secondly, equality of status and of opportunities. Fourth is fraternity, assuring the dignity of every individual. These are the important dimensions which we have to look into. And in context to that, immediately after the formation of the United Nations, the Charter of the United Nations has mandated for the first time the term human rights. And these are the important components of the bigger dimension of human rights we will have to make study too. One very important aspect I like to draw the attention of learned teachers here to Article 23, Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which speaks about the intellectual right protection of any person in any region. There are collaborations, transnational collaborations or international collaboration under the aegis of the United Nations. That aspect is very important. Secondly, I like to draw the attention of Article 1 and Article 2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There are 30 human rights which have been declared to be universally important for all the nations, and all the member states of, including India, have already ratified to that extent. And ultimately, in India also, we have enacted the Protection of Human Rights Act in 1993. Second aspect is Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Rights speaks that everybody is born free with dignity and rights. Secondly, Article 2 mandates that nobody can be subjected to any kind of discrimination based on caste, creed, gender, place of birth, or as in a similar nation. Then in 1966, two of the covenants have been adopted by the United Nations. And those are the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Secondly, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. So both these international covenants are very much relevant for understanding the wider perspective and deeper perspective of the intellectual property rights. I feel and I understand that these are very much relevant to our understanding and grasp the ideas about the intellectual property rights. Article 1 common to both these international covenants speaks about right to self-determination. Right to self-determination has different dimensions, including the social security. But then most important aspect is the peoples, the nationalities, as they belong to different biodiversities, and also the natural environments. They have certain legitimate natural rights over those flora and fauna, and also, in addition to that, the cultural aspects of life. Now, in context to that, our Constitution, Article 29(1) of the Constitution, it provides a fundamental right to every nationalities, every tribes, every communities to have a fundamental right to protect, develop, promote their culture, language, heritage, as the case may be. That is the basic fundamental right which we have to be very much interested with. The inaugurator, Professor Sarika, has very widely spoken about the cultural development and contribution of those learned people who were the creators, right from Shankardeva, Madhavdeva, and all other contributors to this cultural aspect is very important to be taken into consideration. Otherwise, if we are not conscious about protecting our own cultural rights, there is nobody on earth who will come and save our own culture and heritage. That is the most important aspect I like to draw attention to all the learned participants here. Secondly, as in the preamble of the Constitution, It speaks about fraternity, that is the universal brotherhood. We will have to make some transnational or international treaties, documents, negotiations, declarations, as I've already mentioned a few of them, that has the impact on the life of indigenous people of every country. As a culture and heritage of the indigenous people around the world is under threat because of piracy and many other aspects. And that is why in 2007, the United Nations has adopted a declaration for the rights of indigenous people. And Government of India is also a signatory to that. Then in promoting that spirit that is incorporated in that indigenous right of the protection of right of indigenous people, protection of right of indigenous people, that indicates right over land, right over other properties, but also very recently on the 42nd Amendment to the Constitution, the structure of India has been tremendously changed to tune with the international spirit. And Article 30, which was Article 31, which was saying that right to property, landed property was a fundamental right. But because of the development and progress that is promised and tried to be promoted by adoption of different policies for the development of every community in India, this has been withdrawn. And ultimately, Article 300 capital A has been incorporated therein on the basis of the American concept known as the eminent domain. Eminent domain means we do not have a right over the land we are using. It is the land, it is the property of the state for the public interest, and we will be duly compensated and, if need be, rehabilitated. But then very recently, immediately after the amendment, the Supreme Court of India, a number of cases has established that right to intellectual property is also a property under the domain of Article 300 capital A of the Constitution of India. That aspect is also very much important to look into. Then in context to making laws with the spirit of international laws and treaties, Article 51C of the Constitution, which provides for respecting and honoring the spirit that is incorporated in all these international documents in the form of declaration, conventions, covenant, treaties, bilateral, trilateral, multilateral, as the case may be. So based on that, the Constitution of India, adhering to the international law obligation, has incorporated Article 253 of the Constitution, which mandated that the Parliament will have to make law incorporating those objectives of those international laws and into the national legal system. And that way, most of the laws, as I'll come to the specific areas I will refer to, most of the laws have been amended, modified, or enacted newly to commensurate the requirements of international relationship. Then the first schedule of the first list of the 7th schedule of the Constitution that provides for union list. If we go, then we'll find that Article 245, 246, 248 of the Constitution, these are very important aspects because item 12, 13, 14, and item 49, and item 97 of the union list, it provides for the making of laws, tuning with the international law spirit, so that all these laws which are required to protect the intellectual property rights in different forms are well protected. As a result of which number of legislations have come up, I'll come specifically, but I'm just drawing the idea, the relationship between international law and the national law and how to harmonize the system so that transnational order, we can protect the interests and we can protect the intellectual property rights of the indigenous people of different corners of the world in a congregated manner. Second aspect is that in most of the cases, as I like to refer to Article 13 of the Constitution, which speaks about the inclusive definition of law. In India, during the British regime, many of the laws have been enacted to suit their imperialism, and that is still continuing in India. There's a time, very recently, the Honorable Supreme Court, in relation to a case under Article 124B of the Constitution, 124A of the Constitution, that is the sedition, that the Supreme Court is also making an observation that this is a British saga law, and does it require to continue even after 70 years of our independence? Now it is under judicial scrutiny, sub judice. We have no comment on merit of that. But then the observation of the Supreme Court I'm making too, that is the significance of different types of rights as well. Now, Article 13, Clause 2, it speaks about the Parliament and the state legislatures on the 7th schedule of the Constitution provided in 3 lists, union list, state list, and concurrent list, to make laws which will not be going contrary to the fundamental rights under Part 3 of the Constitution, fundamental rights to equality, fundamental rights to freedom, fundamental rights to life and liberty, fundamental right against exploitation, fundamental rights to practice, profession, propagate religion of one's choice. So these are the important dimensions which will have to be looked into. And when we talk in general that this intellectual property right is a big C, but then we have to understand it under different aspects. But then, because the time will not permit me to go in detail, I will be shortening the way to coming to the specific areas, whatever that might be. And thirdly, the Constitution Article 13 Clause 3 speaks about that law includes rules, regulations, bylaws, notifications, conventions, customs, usages. That is also an important aspect, just to highlight and establish that these intellectual property rights have got constitutional significance, international law significance, and we are to hammer it. We are to promote the culture of respecting them. Otherwise, the process will make the process of verse to extinction of our own culture, heritage, whatever that might be, fauna and flora. And for your information, out of around 21 bio hotspots in the world, the Northeast is one of the hotspots, and now it is under piracy. And some of my research scholars were prosecuting research in the entire Northeast relating to intellectual property and sui generis like that, and also the geographical indications. And we have found a very serious and threatening development that is going on in the process of extinction of those flora and fauna, or the intellectual rights of the indigenous people. And we will have to, as an academician, we'll have to promote the culture of jurisprudential aspects as well as lateral thinking, innovatively creating something so that we can protect our own culture heritage as well as the biodiversity we live in and we sustain with. Now, development is going without bothering about the sustainability. It is only the sole development we are expecting to, as a result of which we are seeing for the last 1.5 years, we have been suffering under threat of natural disasters. We are not in the position to overcome it only because we are very much enthusiastic towards the contribution of using the science in an immoral and in unethical manner, as a result of which we are creating the natural calamities like the health hazards or whatever that might be. And in this way, if we are very much addicted towards using the science in an unethical manner, then the annihilation of human civilization will not take much time. It is an indication by the nature, as we know, whatever that might be. Now, when we're talking of the usage and customs and conventions, that indicates that we have certain important areas to be trusted upon and make primary research on those aspects. It is full and abundance of materials, but systematically and with honesty. If we have to make thorough research so that we can figure out something and communicate to the world that yes, we are indigenous people of this region, and these are our own natural national properties. We have got intellectual property rights, sui generis, biodiversity, and other aspects of the international law recognized rights. Now coming to this constitutional obligation, constitutional provisions, there are yet many other areas which are to be improved by making legal provisions. And as an academician, I make an appeal to all the learned teachers gathering over here to dwell upon these areas and make discussions, seminars, symposiums, whatever it might be, interactions and field report, field studies, so that we can develop something and bring it to the fore for the national government or the state government to initiate the process for the betterment and protection and promotion and development of these rights in the proper perspective. Now, coming to the areas of the intellectual property rights in a very specific way. As we know that around the world, there is a crisis which is felt by all the nationalities, that there is violation of different types of human rights, and violation and infringement upon the intellectual property right of its different dimensions are also progressing in a geometrical way. And this is a threat. And because of that, the United Nations is dwelling upon making different types of research and studies through its agencies, and also the non-governmental organizations, research work, scientists, and as a result of which we are finding something which are indicating the veil of danger, and that is to be checked by innovative ideas. How to create that innovative idea for protection of them is very important. In this aspect, in the national level and international level, and at practically the global level, the extortion we are making to the natural resources of country and of the globe as a whole on the Mother Earth, we are creating the conditions which are not healthy for human survival. Say, for example, the excessive carbon content we are releasing to the nature because of industrialization and many other contributory factors, having the fascination that yes, by science we can do everything, but we are doing everything towards what? Towards, as we are governed by two laws, I personally believe. And these two laws are, one is the spiritual law, the second is the law of matter. We are giving much emphasis on this development of science and technology, which has formally started 500 years back. But the spiritual law of nature, the creator who has created the earth, and we are the created, or we are created beings. And also this harmonization that continued for millions of years, and after that only for 500 years we have gone purely for scientific studies. I being a student of science, and I am also realizing, and for that matter, many of the students who are the science students, they are also realizing this, that the missing point, the delinking of the spiritual law from the law of matter results into different types of crisis, and we are just advancing the annihilation of human civilization, the Mother Earth, in a very rapid way. Now, coming to this aspect, we have different aspects to be looked into. Primarily the right of the indigenous people in the proper perspective. And now coming to the specific areas. In the specific areas, if we come, then we find that in the international level, say for example, there were different types of conventions. The Paris Convention for Protection of Industrial Property, and that was followed by the Barney Convention for the Protection of Literary and Artistic works, and Rome Convention for the protection of producers of phonograph and broadcasting organizations, and that way, Geneva Convention for protection of new plant varieties. These are the international level. As we know that GATT, General Agreement of Trade, Tariff and Trade, that was subsequently converted into WTO in 1994. The Geneva Convention on Protection of New Plant Varieties and GATT and the WTO Agreement, and also the TRIPS Agreement, Trade-Related Intellectual Property Rights Agreement. And India is also a pertinent member of that TRIPS Agreement, by virtue of which we had to make, as because it is our international obligation, we had to amend many of the laws which were prevailing in India that was originated during the British India regime. It has to be modified and updated to the requirement of the TRIPS Agreement, Trade-Related Intellectual Property Rights Agreements. Then Geneva Convention for World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, World Intellectual Property Right Organization, that was very recently in 60s of the last century that has developed, and that monitors the entire affairs of all the nations under the aegis of the United Nations. And gradually, the scientists, all the philosophers, the jurists, academicians, and also the judiciary in different countries are trying to contribute whatever is possible for the protection of these intellectual property rights, as the case may be. Now, coming to the specific area, the first I like to discuss about the Trademarks Act of 1999. Trademark is a design, is a word, or is a symbol, or is a letter. And whoever has created that letter, symbol, or a form, that the creator has been conferred the absolute right to continue with this. Then others cannot take that trademark, take the design or the mark, and they cannot do practice for earning profit. They have got the absolute right over that. So the Trademark Act of 1999 in India, they have, this act has already taken care of the trademark, but then the trademark, who has invented, who has created, they will have to register with the trademark agencies, appropriate authorities for the recognition. Then only, as because they are recognized, that will be within their domain for continuing with this, and the trademark will continue as the case may be, and nobody can take resort to dubious manner or say malpractices for that. Second is the Patent Act. Patent has encompassed different dimensions of intellectual properties. Patent, say for example, it consists of exclusive right of manufacture of articles, production of certain articles, certain commodities. It may be in the form of goods and services, but whether it is a trade or it is a patent, it is maybe in the form of goods or in the form of services. So the trademark and the Patent Act of 1970, that was modified from the earlier, say, anglicized concept of that Patent Act. And the Patent Act, it covered the patent of any product, maybe industrial product, or any product of that nature. Say, for example, as we are talking about the intellectual property rights, say, for example, let us come to a very trivial example, the gamusha, the design that is created by the weaver. And most of the cases, the designs are taken away, pirated, and it is wrongly utilized for the benefit, financial benefit by the pirates. And taking one example therein, now the gamusha, the design, and Now, of course, it is a debate going on whether the Gamusha should be protected under geographical indication or copyright or patent. The debates are going on. That issue is very sensitive. That is why different types of resources are going on. On the one example I'm just talking to, there are innumerable examples. Time will not permit me to go in detail to every items to that. Then next to it is a design act. There are different designs that can be done by different people. Design of jewelry, design of work, design of handicrafts, and fashions and luxury items, whatever that might be. So the design that is created by the creator, it is to be well protected, but then this creator of the design will have to make application to the appropriate authority for their registration, so that subsequently no other person can violate it, because it has already been registered in the name of the creator of the design. Then secondly, next to design is the copyright. Copyright is most important and precious intellectual right of intellectual property. Say, for example, in a copyright, as I at the very beginning I mentioned about, that it is a literary artistic work, or in the form of novels, poems, plays, film works, and the music, composition of music and instruments. Now, in those areas, whoever has created it, whoever has invented it, it is to be well protected. It is to be well protected. Now, the question comes, the limitation. In the case of copyrights, it depends on if it is literary work or the musical works. Earlier, it was for the lifetime of the creator. Let's say, for example, the songs of Dr. Bhupen Hazarika, or for that matter, whoever has created it, or the Bihu songs or Bongit or other songs which are created. Say, for example, Vishnu Rava's songs, then Parvati Prasad Borwa's song. That way, Jyoti Prasad Agarwal's songs, to name a few. Or say, for example, some of the songs that were created by, or some of the innovative creations created by Rabindranath Tagore. These are example purpose I'm talking about. So on there, during the lifetime of the creator, and now the amended section 22 of the Act, Copyright Act of 1957, which has been amended, it covers that the lifetime of the person plus 60 years after his date. The lifetime, of course, the person who is living, and during that lifetime, he will avail the exclusive right over his creations, plus 60 years after his date. That means the trustworthy or the authority he has entrusted to, he has bequeathed to, that trustworthy or the authority or the agency he has bequeathed will continue with that right of intellectual property for 60 years. And for that literary, say for example, a poem, say for example, a prose or a novel, whatever that might be, there also it will continue with that 60 lifetime of the creator, as well as 60 years after his date. But one very important thing is, during the lifetime, even the copyright can be transferred to other persons or other agencies subject to the will of the creator, and that is also transferable, right? Copyright is transferable, of course, with the consent and approval of the creator. So this is also very important. Now, in relation to that, I'd like to draw the attention of the learned academicians to section 52. Say, for example, we are academicians, we will definitely hunt whatever literature, whatever material of research which are available. And the creators who have created those ideas, we may take the ideas and we can paraphrase or we can communicate in the code form, but that with the proper acknowledgement. Otherwise, it will be a violation of copyright, or which is known as plagiarization. Now, Section 52 is also providing a wider scope for research workers and critics of that nature, that for their honest academic work, especially the research and also critics and reviews, even if they are using it, that is permissible. In case of research, of course, there is permissibility. In case of critics or review making of those literature of the creator, it is permissible. But in some of the cases, we are really sad with this, that we are taking a shortcut. Very recently, one of the creators has made a complaint against the professor of Guwahati University. I'm really shocked with, as I have rendered at least 7 years of my service in that university. So I'm shocked with that news, that some of their ideas have been plagiarized and without any acknowledgement has been used as if it is his contribution. This is the saddest part of academic world. We are the teachers, and the quality of teacher should not be to steal. Quality of teacher should be always to hunt and innovate. And if need be, if we are taking resort to some other ideas, we should have that sensibility of recognition, giving recognition and acknowledgement to that. It is not losing anything. Rather, it will increase the prestige of the research worker or the professor. Earlier also, 2-3 occasions, we have found that original creators have complained, lodged complaint to the Guwahati University. For that matter, other universities may be also having such instances, but this is bad. And it is my personal feeling that the 7th-page commission during the Prime Ministership of Manmohan Singh, he was an academician. He realized that the intellectual people, the intellectually calibered people should be retained in academics. That is why the pay structure has been increased. That created a jealousy among other sectors of the state. Now, I think most of the universities, I don't know about the private universities, but the government universities or the statutory universities, we are well paid. As a professor, we are drawing 2.5 lakhs of salaries. Can we not think about buying certain books? Can we not do research? Because we are meant for that. This 2.5 lakhs is given for doing the honest work so that we can make a path through which our followers' generations will continue. This is sad part. Whatever that might be, as it shocked me, I'm very sorry that I have to communicate this with this. Second to copyright, as I mentioned about the design, then geographical indication of goods. Geographical indication. Say, for example, when we talk about geographical indication, that itself indicates a specific geographical location. And the right is to be availed by that region. Now, one thing is very important in case of geographical indication. Say, for example, if we take the gamusha as an example, or for, say, for example, Assam tea, Darjeeling tea, basmati rice, it indicates a specific area, geographical area, wherein many of the people are striving much for promoting that in a cultural way. And that is why these are social rights, not individual rights. And say, for example, we have got different medicinal plants, fauna and flora, then fruits, vegetables, which are very much unique, and it is not found in any other places of the world. Then in that case, the geographical indication comes in. I had the opportunity of attending an international seminar in Delhi long back, the 90s. Then I was defending the patent of NIM. And our two agricultural scientists were defending the geographical indication tag for the basmati rice, because in America, they were genetically doing the research and through genetic modification, the flavor and the scent of the basmati rice, they have hybridized it. That is possible by science. And science has gone to the extent of that we can create human being from the skin of a living being, whether it is ethically or morally correct. And that is why there are so many ethical and moral checks. In the entire intellectual property right, ethics and morality plays a dominant role, and we'll have to continue with that process. So whatever that might be, ultimately, of course, because of the logical argument of our agricultural scientists, the patent or the geographical indication of the basmati rice in the foothills of Himalaya, that is still kept intact. In case of, say, muga rearing in the rural areas of Assam, a famous silk that is produced, and the durable materials and many, many royal and majestic clothes and dresses are prepared since time immemorial. But then the muga, in case of muga, it is again a thread that is coming to the rarer of the muga, who are conserving the tradition of muga culture. They are common people. They do not have that understanding. And the initiative should be there from academic side, socially conscious side, and also from the government side to sensitize them that you have got an intellectual property right to continue with this. Because now intellectual property right is a global competition. We have been fighting tooth and nail for protecting that. Supposing at a certain point of time, taking the casualty of understanding or casualty, if the patent or the geographical indication, whatever that might be, when the domain, wherever we like to put in, then say, for example, Japan is also famous for silk. And supposing Japan has taken some of the cocoons and they have started therein. And ultimately in the competition, Japan will try to prevail over us as the America was trying to prevail over India basmati rice. Our intellectual property right is in threat. And that is why the sensitization program is very important. So from that perspective, geographical indication aspect is very important to be looked into. As because it is a time-bound program, I will have to constrain to the confined with certain topics of these areas, just giving hints to the seriousness of the matter. Then next important aspect is the protection of plant varieties. As you know, very recently, the Central Cabinet Minister, Sarbananda Sonowal, he is also holding the ministership of Ayush Ministry. So Ayush is Ayurvedic. There are abundant medicinal plants in the Northeast which are used for curing many types of incurable diseases which cannot be cured by the allopathic medicines. Very recently, I come to know that in Sibsagar district, one of the professors of botany of my age. He was making a study on different plants, especially the medicinal plants, which are very much common in every kitchen garden and also in every household gardens. And he made certain researches on it. And that medicine was traditionally there. But the question is, the scientific aspect of that is very important. He was a man of science, and he has done it on an experimental basis. He was making a statement that his daughter, a young girl, who was suffering from a serious bronchial problem, he has roamed around the country, going to the most renowned allopathic doctors, but no good result. Then he started doing experiment with full confidence that if I administer this medicine, let me see, because these are not harmful, no chemical reactions there. Commonly, we take it. Say, for example, in our culture, there are 101 plants. Their leaves are taken on the Guru Bihu, the festival of most important festival of Assam. That is a traditional, that is a traditionality. But then to contain that traditionality, as because this process is in the process of extinction, then how do we celebrate, how do we maintain our cultural aspects of it, whatever that might be. So then ultimately, in a very short period of time, the medicine he created out of the medicinal plants started working so fast, and within a very short time, she recovered well. And that scientist's daughter and son-in-law, both are there in Germany, now in well position, doing research on treatment of kidney failures, damage of kidney in Germany. And Germany, they are really appreciating the innovation of traditional medicine by this scientist of CESR. And now it is internationally, he's a renowned person. So the plant varieties and farmers right. Now the question is that how to continue the tradition of growing these medicinal plants as well as other plants, plant varieties, and protecting the existing ones as well as by the process of hybridization, by the process of cross-pollination. Can we think about better varieties of these medicinal plants, which will be the most adequate and appropriate alternative for curing of different types of incurable diseases? And we should be proud of that in entire Northeast, which is the one of the 21 biohotspots of the world, it is well enriched with and in abundance. These medicinal plants are there. The other important plant varieties are there. And say, for example, the neem plantation. When I was there in the international seminar, then I was talking to the government of India, the Trade and Commerce. Then I was making a request to the government of Assam as well as the government of India, that because of the carbon pollution or the pollution to the environment of the industrialization or whatever form, the air is polluted. Can we think about shifting, say for example, especially the tea gardens, more than thousands of tea gardens are there, and there, if we replace these trees which are standing there by the neem plantation, then it will have good impact on environment, and it is insecticide itself, and it is also one of the important medicine for skin diseases and also other diseases. I have also experimented therein. Now, say for example, long back, about 20 years back, I have given that if the entire tea gardens in Assam would have replaced cerise plant by the neem plant by this time, say for example, the dried leaves would have been a fertilizer, and from that neem, the neem oil is prepared in other countries, and it is becoming too costly. And on the whole balance, if we have started with neem plantation, the pollution of environment to that extent would have been greatly taken care of. And right to clean environment is a fundamental right. But then as because we are not bordering about spiritually thinking about, as a result of which we are very much fascinated for destruction. Nuclear armaments and nuclear weapons becomes the fashion of the 21st century, even in mid of the 20th century was also there. Nuclear armaments, weapons of mass destruction. What is the benefit we are deriving out of that? Now the entire world is squeezed with the impact of coronavirus. Can we or could we invent a nuclear weapon that once it is dropped in a country, there will be no diseases, and people of that country can live with healthy life for 100 years without taking any food? I would have given full credit to those scientists. And now what I feel that this is not happening because of too much fascination to this aspect. Secondly, plant varieties and farmers' rights are very important. In most of the Northeast regions and all the states, the orchids, the ornamental plantation, and ornamental fauna as well. Many of the ornamental fishes are in the process of extinction in the state of Assam because of using more chemical pesticides and also manures. As a result of which, there was a culture during the rainy season. I am really proud of being the son of the cultivator. I had the experience during my childhood. Then when the rainy season, when we're going to plant the crops, then we prepare the soil, prepare the soil, the field by plowing. And during that period, this, we call the field, was abundant with small fishes. Therein, even in most of the water resources, the colorful ornamental fishes were there. But then it is in a process of extinction because the people who are in custody, I should say naturally, the custodial, that they're enticed with little bit of money and they are just handing it over to the pirates, and as a result of which we are doing damage to our environment, as the case might be. It was in abundance. Then as I was talking of the orchids, it was more than 500 varieties of orchids. Now in the recent assessment, it has been reduced to around 250 species. Half of them is gone. And if we are not in a position to protect this half which is in existence from extinction, then ultimately it will be in the record of history. After 100 years, when the young generation, the coming generation will come, they will read in the archives or read in the history books that Northeast was one of the 21 bio hotspots in the world, and there were so many fauna and floras, but because of irresponsibility of our earlier generation, this has gone into extinct. So whether it is a matter of pride or a prejudice. I'm just throwing this problem to the learned teachers to realize it. Secondly, the semiconductor integrated circuits, the layout designs. Therein, the electronic developments or the electronic innovativeness and creations. Say, for example, a computer and a different electronic parts. A person or a company had created it, and many people are trying to pirate it, take the formula out of it, which is totally prohibited under the Act of 2000 and also the Freedom of Information Act. The trade secret under Section 8(1) of the Act, it is totally prohibited, and that will continue, the trade secret will continue with that person. As for example, whether it is a semiconductor or the patent or the copyright, whatever that might be, as I've said about the specific period within which that will remain with the creator. But then after that, it will automatically become public property, not individual, but public property. And in most of the statutes, it is for 20 years. And after that, say, for example, in a confidential defense dealings, defense methodology of war for protection of the nation, it is confidential, secret that cannot be divulged, cannot be accessed to for 20 years. And after the new method of defense has been created, even if it is divulged, it will not affect the war strategy or the defense strategy of the country, and security of the state and the friendly relations of them cannot be at stake. So from that perspective also, it is very important. And most of the cases, what we find that in the method of, say, electronic world, there are many piracies which are going on, duplications which are going on. Say, for example, in China is a clear example that anything is possible for them and everything is possible for them. But then that ideology is totally out of the purview of morality, the sense of the spirit, sense of the spiritual law. And I personally believe, sorry, like all other scientists, including Einstein, that if we want to balance the imbalances that we are creating by taking resort to science, it is the law of spirit. And Einstein has admitted that I do not have any extra caliber, but because of, say, continuous persuasion, I could discover whatever I have discovered. Say, for example, E is equal to mc squared, the theory of relativity. And that way, Bertrand Russell, he has also admitted, and many of the prolific writers of English world, and I'm talking about T.S. Eliot, admitted very recently that the philosophy or the philosophers of the Western world are, when compared with the philosophers of India, the world of spirituality, the philosophers of the West are seen as a child or a children. Time and again, whatever is there that have been admitted by different renowned personalities of the world doing research or innovation in different disciplines. And that is why we are to be very much aware of that. We have got abundance. We are rich with the culture, heritage. And if we are not trying to protect it, then who is going to protect our own interests and rights? We will have to be very much individual in that particular perspective under the domain of right of the indigenous people for protecting the intellectual property rights, sui generis, or whatever that might be. Now, coming to the last domain, that is the Biological Diversity Act. The biological diversity. With that reference, I'd like to draw attention to 3 of the international summits on the human. First summit was 1972 in the Stockholm Conference. Then most of the countries, around 145 countries of the United Nations, they have joined hands. The advanced countries, the developing countries, and underdeveloping countries. They have joined hands that we are to protect the Mother Earth from destruction, from more destruction. The depletion of ozone layer is well to be protected. And as we have adhered to that document or that convention, then in India, in 1972, Wildlife Protection Act has come into being. Certain wildlife were in the verge of extinction. That is why they have been scheduled to be very vulnerable. That is why Schedule 1, Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule 3, like that. And immediately after that, in 1980, the Conservation of Forest Act was enacted in India, adhering to that objectives. What is the idea? The idea is, if the state or its agencies wants to make certain developmental programs in a forest area covered by forest, but the Ministry of Environment and Forest is the ultimate authority under that act. The concerned department will have to make an appeal, or the concerned government has to make an application to the Environment and Forest Ministry. And those ministry will make pure survey, going to the spot and talking to the people who are dwelling in that biodiversity. And only after that, if the views of the common people who are dwelling over there has the opinion that yes, it can be. But another point is there, if we are doing the developmental program in that area, in a barren area, which is declared to be forest area, but then alternatively, same area of land will have to be earmarked in some other places wherein the social forestry will be grown. That means the balancing of the forest that is needed for protection of environment and clean air, which is the fundamental right on the right to life and personal property of individuals, it is to be well protected too. Now, this is one aspect. Secondly, in the Nairobi conference of after a decade in 1982, the environmental hazards, the Western effluents released by the industries, damaging the natural sources of water, surface water, is to be protected. That is why, in adherence to that, under the international obligation, the Protection of Environment Act 1986 was enacted. So that indicated that whether with the effluents or the release of waste, liquid, gaseous, dangerous element are to be checked so that human life is precious, human life has a chance of continuity. Then after that, they were also the underdeveloped countries, developing countries, and developed countries. Developed countries were shouldering the responsibility for logistic support to the developing countries and underdeveloped countries for promoting that programs in the world. But on analysis, it was found that in 1992, because it was a decade program, whatever development that has taken place, they will dwell upon it. And 1992, in Rio Earth Summit, it was found that the responsibilities are not discharged by the developed countries And also the initiative is also very much lack in developing countries like India and also underdeveloped countries, third world countries. And as a result of which they have taken another vote, how to protect it, environment, fauna, flora, clean environment, social forestry, as the case may be. Then adhering to those principles, as I mentioned about in 2001, the Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act was enacted. And in 2007, the Declaration of Right of Indigenous People for protection of the sui generis, and also whether in the form of patent or in the form of copyright or in the form of geographical indication, they will be entitled to protect their own rights. And right of a land was also to be facilitated by the existing state governments, because land belongs to the state, not to the union, whatever that might be. Now, biological diversity, Protection of Biological Diversity Act. The biodiversity, as I mentioned about, we are proud of being born in the Northeast, that part of India wherein the sun rises. Rising sun is a hope, is an aspiration that I'm getting a better day, and with that spirit, I will do certain works commendable. And in the West, the sun sets. It results into depression. And most of the Western scientists are now admitting that the spiritual element in Indian culture, unless we maintain that, the culture in the West, it is really in the process of annihilating, like a cancerous growth in the process of annihilation of the human civilization. And that is why, as we are fortunate enough to be in the East, we should be proud of, but then we'll have to maintain that tradition in its proper perspective with our own skill and endeavor. Now, it is there. I'd like to mention only Section 36 of the Act. Section 13.6.4 of the Biological Diversity Act provides that any government agencies, or any other agencies entrusted to by the government for developing certain developmental programs or the developmental works in a biodiversity area, the first priority should be given to the knowledge, indigenous traditional knowledge of the people who are dwelling for generations. Their ideas are given more primacy than to the scientific and experimental ideas. That is the provision of the Biological Diversity Act. Now the question is, now there are the fascination for generating electricity, and China is taken as an example. But the last devastation of the China's dams, I think it should be a lesson for us to think about twice, whether we should go for that or we should go for the most cheap alternative, that is the sunlight. Sun is the source of all energies. So whether we can go for that without damaging the course of nature. See, very shortcut way we can think about without being linked to the spiritual part, which is the reality of life, I think. And the reality is the distinction between a living man and a dead man. What is that element that makes a distinction between a living man and a dead man? And that is called the soul. Whether we term it as a soul or life energy, it is real. Even the science is also admitting that. And that is why we should address to our soul. Soul has a link to the super soul, who is the creator. And if we have that sense of belongingness, sense of rationality, sense of justice, then only human civilization has a chance of progressing, and the yet to come generations. And we should not feel that the world or the Mother Earth belongs to our generation. No, there are many generations which are yet to come. But then what we are living for them, if we are living a totally dirt from all spectrum, earth, environment polluted, nothing, groundwater extortion, exploitation is going on, and ultimately what will happen? And I think it will be a curse on our generation by the yet to come generations, that when they will come to that, they will suffer, and automatically their soul will curse us. What wrong you have done, what right you have to damage our right to life with dignity. So our soul will not be content with, or we will not get peace even after death, I believe. And from that perspective, we'll have to look into all these aspects with a limited knowledge on the intellectual property right in the general way. I have made these submissions to the learned academicians, and let us join hands in improving that, improving the environment, and sensitize the young generation that, and sensitize ourselves as it, that life is a combination law of spirit and law of matter. We should balance it in that way. Then only survival will be meaningful, and we will not be cursed by the coming generations for our misdeeds. Thank you very much. Hello.
Thank you so much for such an informative and interesting deliberation, sir. Sir has elaborated the things so minutely with giving many examples so that we can understand the topic of discussion without any difficulties. Definitely our participants are learning many informative and many new things from your topic of discussion, sir. The session will be open for participants to directly interact with sir. Before that, I would like to request Professor Lalitunga sir to share his view on today's topic of discussion. Sir.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. But I do not have much more things to say because the submissions made by our resource person, as I guess, before taking his turn, has deliberated upon different aspects of intellectual property rights. And as I guess, he's the right person to speak on this. And I'm also very much delighted by the content of his speech and not being a professor from the legal studies, but I'm very much benefited by his lecture. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, sir. And participants are requested to directly interact with sir.
Sorry for interruption. Since I have seen here Professor Khukon Chandra Das sir, senior most professor from Department of Political Science, Assam University, Ipu campus. He's from the Department of Political Science. We are very fortunate to see you, sir, here. I would like to request Khukon Das sir to share your views.
Thank you, Dr. Das. I have attended, participated in another webinar 2 or 3 days back, where the topic was also same. So I have got a new lesson today, mainly from Dr. Ramesh Varpatra Guwahati sir. On that day, that was purely theoretical, to some extent practical. Today, I have got a lot of informations regarding theoretical as well as practical, and I found that the topic was very much informative. Sir has given many informations from universal human human rights declaration to the present day context of Northeast India and the responsibility of the citizens of this region, not only the country, of this region particularly, because this Northeast is really full of flora and fauna, Sir has rightly indicated. And what I did find that when we talk about intellectual property rights, one question comes to my mind. Long back, there was a lot of discussions, lot of queries about the brain drain also. But I do find that brain drain, that whether that can be accommodated in the within the purview of these intellectual property rights or not. So may I request Dr. Guwahati to highlight his views on this issue also. So because that is a question in my mind, because nowadays also we find that when we find that our intellectuals, they are always eager to leave our country, because intellectual means what? Not only intellectual properties or other things that we are discussing, that is as our intellectual property rights, but intellectuals as human beings, who are the actual property as a actually intellectual property rights. What I do feel, that is being actually what we find, we cannot preserve them. Most of the intellectuals who are there in and around the world, actually we find that they are bringing the name and fame, but they are our property, they were our property, but we have lost them. So sir, may I request you to highlight your views on this issue also. And apart from that also, I found a lot of informations and informative things that sir has highlighted. So thank you very much, sir. And thanks to the organizers also for organizing such a burning issue like intellectual property rights, the webinar, which actually benefited the people who have participated, and others also should participate and to enrich themselves also. Thank you, sir.
Yes. As you're talking about this brain drain, is a human resource drain is, yes, it is one aspect of the intellectual property right. It has two dimensions. One is, in context to that, how the brain drain that takes place. One is the state we have created with the delegated process of representation, that is of policymakers. I'll cite about early 60s, around early 60s, you might be knowing about Professor Hargobind Khurana, who had discovered gene. And to my understanding, when I was a student of, say, in the high school, it was coming to my knowledge that he was demanding a 10 lakhs of rupees for establishing a laboratory for doing research. But my information is, Government of India did not provide that amount. And ultimately, as we know, the Western countries, they are really hunting the talents, the human resources, which will be very much helpful for them. And they have volunteered to assist him and provided him laboratory for improving his research on human genes. That is one aspect. There are many other examples as well of drainage of human resource. Second is the sensitivity of belongingness. I do not say about my personal experience. I had the opportunity for a higher education in Britain in the early 80s, especially on law. But I was having no fun. But then I made request to the government of Assam that please help me, please assist me, provide me, maybe as a loan, 80,000 rupees, 1981. The word was big and O. Had you been a student of science, that's provision, but for law, and O. My purpose was not that I will go abroad and establish therein. I have a sense of belongingness to my own area. Because you'll see, in most of the cases, pre-independent India, many of the great Indian people were going there doing research methodically there in the upcountries or the West. But they have come back with that obligation to India, and they have tremendously contributed to the development of intellectuality of India in different disciplines. Whatever that might be. Second aspect is, in a modern day, as I've said about, we are too much addicted towards glory, fame. And one of the things I like to see that Constitution has given us the fundamental right to protect our own language, culture, heritage. Yes, I have learned foreign languages. And for that matter, I like to refer to Pandit Prabhu Krishnakanta Andikwe, who was the first Vice Chancellor of Guwahati University. He has learned and mastered over 14 foreign languages. And most of the countries, his writings in those foreign languages are still there. The library he has donated to Guwahati University. There are many books which are only kept in shelves. As because we are not acclimatized with those languages, we are not in a position to read them and get the original ideas. Whatever that might be. But for that matter, he was not neglecting his own mother tongue. And today we have a fascination, especially being addicted to the Western culture. I'll mention in 1832, in February 1832, Lord Macaulay, who was a member of Parliament Britain, before that, he was paying visit to every corner of the country, India. And going back, he has made a statement in the Parliament, which is recorded, that I have gone to every corner of the country. The people are so generous. Their education system is so rich with spirituality. If we are to perpetrate our imperialism, then we will have to hit at the backbone of the culture and education. It is the quoted version. It is available in the net as well. So that is the starting point. And now, even with the broken backbone, we are saying privilege. Say, for example, if I have a daughter and a son, what will I insist on? Forget about your mother tongue, learn English. And when we are going to our society, I will say that my daughter doesn't know how to speak in Assamese, how to speak in the local language. She is virgin English. So whatever that might be. So that is another fascination which is also going. And this brain drain is really a debatable issue. And that can definitely be brought under the big domain of intellectual property rights. One thing is the government who are forming the government, they are representative of the people. The real will of the people is to be ventilated therein by policies, educational policies, if we are in a position to make opportunity for retaining those brains to go out in either way, then I think that human resource intact will be there. in their own places. And we'll have to make a campaign for that. Yes. Around the world, whatever place we are there in, or whatever intellectually we have developed, let us contribute for the society in a very effective manner. So that I think it is a very big domain. There is a requirement of a serious debate and discussion about checking that brain drain so that we can utilize those resources, human resources, for the upliftment and benefit of the indigenous people of region. Not only I'm talking about the Northeast or India, but in other countries also this crisis is cropping up. And there are different debates, discussions around the world regarding this, how to retain the human resource for the betterment of the society they belong to. And I think if we do certain academic exercises as you're proposing, it will be my appeal that let us formulate certain guidelines and proceed on it in a very detailed way and highlight it, bring it to the fore, and hand it over to the policymakers for making different types of educational policies so that we can retain the human resources in our own place and get their service for the betterment of the people who belong to the indigenous. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much
Yes.
for your valuable speech, because what I thought, actually, I have got a lot of things from your university. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much to Das sir also. And I would like to request our Chief Advisor of CESR, Dr. Anil Saikia, sir, to share his views, sir.
Very practical and very useful. I have gone through the whole lecture of Ramesh Borpatta Guwahati. Yes, I should say that it is great. It's great and excellent. It is very informative, and many rules and laws regarding this right of intellectual property right he has discussed. I again grateful to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Participants can interact with sir if anyone want to.
Sure.
Participants are requested to interact with sir. Sir, there seems no questions, but they have given their views on chat box that these are very informative and many other messages, sir. So thank you so much for giving your valuable time, sir. We have learned many things. So now I'd like to request Chandraprabha Devi Sahu ma'am, to Assistant Professor and HOD of Department of Political Science, Machkhowa Degree College, to offer the vote of thanks. Chandraprabha Devi Sahu ma'am. Ma'am, you are not audible.
Am I audible? Yes, I am audible. Good evening to one and all dignitaries on behalf of Center for Ethnic. Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible now, ma'am. Ma'am?
Yes, I'm audible.
Yes, you can continue, please.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Good evening to one and all present here. It is such an honor for me to thank you all dignitaries on behalf of Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, Political Science Association of Assam, and Department of Political Science of Machkhowa Degree College. I would like to express my gratitude to all esteemed delegates of the webinar for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a great success. I extend my gratitude to Chief Advisor Dr. Anil Sarika sir for his valuable speech in welcome address. I thankful to Dr. Dipen Soikia sir, without whose encourage this webinar would be a dream for us. I would like to thank Honorable Inaugurator Professor Lalring Lunga sir, who spread his valuable time for us. My gratitude to respected resource person, Dr. Ramesh Soikia Sandra Barpatta sir, Barpatta Guwahati sir, to take out time from his busy schedule to grace the event. Thank you, sir, for inspiring and encouraging us with your words on this special occasion. A special thanks to Dr. Dalemi Guwahati, Ma'am, Principal of Machkhowa Degree College, for her immense support to make the webinar successful. I also thank Dr. Khukan Chandra Das sir for his active participation. I extend my gratitude to all the participants for their active participation. My sincere gratitude to organizing team for working hard during the session to make this webinar successful. Thank you once again to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With this, it is declared that the session is over, and the certificates for the participant will be generated within 7 days. So with this, today's program is over. On 25th September, there will be a program that will be organized by Assam Political Science Association. So all are requested to join and participate in the forthcoming program. Yeah.
Is it 4th September or
25th.
4th October? 25th. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
At what time?
It will be
25th.
Yes,
yeah,
please.
Okay, sir.
September.
Okay, please.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good night.
Professor Lalit Dunga, sir, thank you so much for your
Okay.
presence.
Good
Yes,
night,
sir.
all of
Sir,
you.
thank you all,
Yeah.
sir.
Good night,
Good
all
night.
of you.
Barpatta Guwahati sir, বহুত ধন্যবাদ আপোনাক. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.